That familiar sting of disappointment. A project you poured your soul into fails to launch. A plan you meticulously crafted collapses at the last minute. A trusted expectation held so firmly in your mind shatters into 1,000 pieces. In that moment, your heart sinks, and the familiar cold knot in your stomach tightens. This isn't just a bad moment. Your brain processes it as a profound defeat, a personal blow that leaves you reeling mentally and physically. Your nervous system, a finely tuned instrument designed for survival, is already in overdrive, preparing for a threat that, in reality, has already passed. The emotional shock wave ripples through you, and for a few seconds or even minutes, you feel lost, unmoored from the calm certainty you had just moments before. This is the raw, unfiltered experience of being crushed. The ancient Stoics, particularly Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's most influential philosophers, understood this internal mechanism with breathtaking clarity. He wasn't a stranger to brutal setbacks. His entire philosophy was forged in the crucible of hardship, designed not for the lecture hall, but for the battlefield of daily life. He taught a principle that forms the very bedrock of our work today. It is not things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about these things. This is not a dismissal of your pain. It is a precise diagnosis of its source. The event itself is neutral, a set of facts. The project was delayed. The flight was canceled. The feedback was critical. The crushing weight comes from the second arrow, the you attached to it. I am a failure. Nothing ever works out for me. This is a catastrophe. This insight is the key that unlocks what we call the impact brace. Think of it like the crumple zone in a car. Its purpose isn't to prevent the collision, which is often outside your control, but to absorb and redistribute the energy of the impact, protecting the vital core. The impact brace is a proactive mental exercise that does the same for your emotional core. Instead of passively awaiting fate, hoping for the best while being emotionally unprepared for anything else, you deliberately engage in a form of proactive mental rehearsal. For any significant plan or expectation, you will set aside a few minutes not just to visualize success, which has its own benefits, but to also calmly and dispassionately consider a plausible setback. The goal here is crucial. It is not to dwell in negativity, to ruminate, or to invite disaster. The goal is to observe potential outcomes as a strategist would, without emotional attachment. You must ask yourself two piercingly specific questions. If this particular outcome doesn't materialize, what would be the actual tangible impact? Strip away the drama. What are the facts? And secondly, in that scenario, what parts of the situation are truly and completely within my control, and what parts are external? Here is what is happening in your brain during this process. When disappointment strikes unexpectedly, your amygdala, the brain's ancient hypervigilant alarm system, can hijack your rational brain. It perceives the gap between expectation and reality as a severe threat, flooding your system with the stress hormones cortisol and adrenaline. This is what triggers the classic fight, flight, or freeze response, leading to that feeling of being overwhelmed, paralyzed, and unable to think clearly. The impact brace, however, is a preemptive strike of logic. It engages your prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, planning, and emotional regulation. The event even happens. By consciously and calmly exploring potential downsides, you are creating and strengthening neural pathways that pre-process these scenarios. You are, in effect, teaching your amygdala that these alternative outcomes are not existential threats. They are simply alternative data sets that can be managed. You reduce their novelty and therefore their perceived threat level. This is a foundational technique in cognitive behavioral therapy known as cognitive restructuring. You are building mental resilience by training your brain to respond with thoughtful adaptation rather than reactive distress. You are moving from being a passenger in your emotional life to being the pilot. Do today. Before your next important meeting, project deadline, or even a difficult conversation, take just 5 minutes. Sit quietly. Mentally rehearse one plausible, non-catastrophic way it might go exactly as planned. Perhaps the client isn't impressed. Perhaps you hit a technical snag. Notice your immediate emotional response, that small jolt of anxiety or fear. Acknowledge it without judgment. Then deliberately shift your focus to the action you would take in that scenario. Not the whole solution, just the first step. This isn't pessimism, it's the crafting of psychological armor. This deliberate practice doesn't invite failure. It inoculates you against its crushing weight. The payoff is immediate and measurable. You will notice a significant reduction in your emotional volatility, a dampening of the sharp peaks of anxiety and the deep valleys of despair. You are transforming potential panic into a calm, focused problem-solving mindset. You are learning to absorb the blow, not be defined by it. From that initial practice of mental rehearsal follows a crucial refinement, a tool of such profound power and simplicity that it can fundamentally re-architect your entire approach to life. The first step, the impact brace, prepares you for the shock. This next step teaches you where to stand so the shock has the least possible effect. It addresses the feeling of powerlessness that so often accompanies disappointment, the insidious whisper that everything is spiraling, that you have lost all command of the situation. This is the feeling that transforms a simple setback into a state of despair. Your brain in this state loses its ability to see a path forward, and the world can shrink to the size of your immediate pain. This is where the Stoics offer a lens of radical clarity. Epictetus provided this lens in what is known as the dichotomy of control. He stated with unwavering certainty, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not up to us." Within our control are our judgments, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is our own doing. Outside of our control are our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, and the actions of others. This isn't a philosophical suggestion. It is a practical, operational sorting mechanism for reality. It is the ultimate filter for your attention and energy. The vast majority of human anxiety, frustration, and suffering stems from a single fundamental error: attempting to exert control over things that are, by their very nature, uncontrollable, while simultaneously neglecting the things that are entirely within our power. Disappointment is the emotional feedback that tells you you've been investing your peace of mind in the wrong column. The practice, therefore, is an exercise in meticulous sorting. Take the disappointing scenario you rehearsed in Block 1, or a real one you are currently facing. Draw 2 columns on a piece of paper or simply in your mind. Title them "Completely Within My Control" and "Completely Outside My Control." Now, dissect the situation and place every single element into one of these 2 columns. Be brutally honest. For example, in a failed job interview, the quality of your preparation, the effort you put into your answers, your choice of attire, your punctuality, these belong in the first column. The interviewer's mood, their biases, the other candidates, the company's internal budget, the final hiring decision, these belong squarely in the second. Your reputation, outside your control. Your character, entirely within it. The outcome of the project, outside your control. The quality of your effort and your response to the outcome, within it. Let's examine the neuroscience of this simple act. Your brain is a prediction and energy conservation machine. When faced with a complex negative event, it can enter a state of high cognitive load. The default mode network, responsible for self-referential thought, can begin to ruminate, spinning endless what-if scenarios about things you cannot change. This is incredibly draining and fuels the production of cortisol. The act of sorting into 2 distinct columns provides immediate relief. It is a powerful form of mental decluttering. By consciously identifying and labeling what is uncontrollable, you are giving your prefrontal cortex explicit permission to stop wasting precious cognitive resources on it. This is the neurological equivalent of closing dozens of unnecessary programs running in the background. Cortisol levels drop. The brain's executive functions, problem solving, emotional regulation, and focused attention are freed up to concentrate solely on the first column, the domain of your actual power. CBT uses a similar tool called worry sorting, where you distinguish between hypothetical worries and practical problems. The Stoics were practicing this 2 millennia ago. The payoff is a profound and immediate shift in your internal state. You move from feeling like a passive victim of circumstance to an active agent of your own response. The feeling of being crushed is a symptom of believing you have no moves left to make. This exercise reveals that you have a move. Even if the list in the Within My Control column is short, perhaps containing only your breath, your attitude, and your next single action, it is the source of all your power and peace. Your agency becomes focused, potent, and effective. You stop fighting reality and start working with it. The act of sorting itself is an act of reclaiming your sanity. Do today. Take the specific scenario you used for your impact brace exercise. Now, formally apply the dichotomy of control. Write down the 2 columns. Meticulously sort every aspect of that situation. When you are finished, look at the outside my control column and consciously, deliberately let it go. Mentally release your grip on those items. Then, turn your full attention to the within my control column. Identify the single most constructive action you can take from that list, no matter how small. Take that action. This is the practice of transforming anxiety into agency, one sorted thought at a time. You are not just managing disappointment, you are mastering the art of living wisely. The next step amplifies this result, turning the impact itself from a source of pain into a tool for future strength. We have braced our minds for the shock and sorted the debris to find our locus of control. But what happens after the dust settles? For many, this is where the second, more insidious wave of suffering begins: rumination. The mind gets stuck in a loop, replaying the failure, assigning blame, often internally, and cementing a narrative of defeat. This mental replay doesn't lead to insight. It deepens the wound, carving neural pathways of anxiety and self-doubt. It's like watching a car crash on a loop, hoping to find a different outcome. The outcome never changes, but the trauma is reinforced with every viewing. To counter this, we turn to another titan of Stoicism, Seneca. In his letters, he described a powerful nightly ritual. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This was not an exercise in self-flagellation. It was a calm, objective, and compassionate post-impact audit. It's the practice of reviewing events not to judge them, but to learn from them. It is the key to ensuring that no pain is ever wasted. We can adapt this practice specifically for moments of disappointment, transforming them from painful endings into invaluable data points for our future resilience. The practice is a structured journaling or mental review process to be performed after a disappointment has occurred and the initial emotional storm has begun to calm. It is guided by 3 specific non-judgmental questions. First, what part of my judgment, not the event, caused the most distress? This question forces you to apply Epictetus's core lesson directly to your own experience. Was it the event itself or the story you told yourself about what it? Did you judge the setback as a final verdict on your worth, a sign of permanent failure? By isolating the judgment, you defang it. You see it for what it is, a thought, a narrative, not an objective truth. This creates psychological distance, allowing you to observe your own mental habits without being consumed by them. Second, which of my actions were aligned with my values and virtues and which were not? This question anchors you back to the dichotomy of control. It shifts the metric of success away from external outcomes and toward internal character. Perhaps the project failed, but did you act with integrity, diligence, and courage throughout the process? If so, you have not failed in the Stoic sense. You have succeeded in the only arena that truly matters. This question helps you recognize your own good efforts, preventing the blanket self-criticism that often follows a setback. It allows you to find honor even in defeat, which is a cornerstone of unshakable self-respect. Third, what can I learn from the outcome to better prepare my impact brace and refine my actions for the future? This is the forward-looking strategic component. It transforms the event from a dead end into a training ground. Was your initial expectation unrealistic? Was there a flaw in your preparation you can now see? Did you misjudge an external factor? This isn't about blame. It's about data acquisition. You are a scientist of your own life, and this setback is a crucial piece of data that can inform your next experiment. This question ensures that you emerge from the experience not weaker, but wiser and better equipped. The neuroscience behind this structured audit is compelling. Destructive rumination often involves the brain's default mode network running in a hyperactive, disorganized loop, strengthening the emotional charge of a negative memory. The post-impact audit, by contrast, is a task-focused, structured inquiry that engages the prefrontal cortex. This executive engagement helps to retrieve the emotional memory from the amygdala and process it through the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. This process, known as memory reconsolidation, effectively strips the memory of its painful emotional charge and reframes it as a useful, instructive narrative. You are literally rewriting your brain's relationship with failure, preventing the formation of trauma-like neural pathways and instead building circuits of wisdom and adaptability. Do today. Think of a small, recent disappointment. It could be anything: burning dinner, a miscommunication with a friend, a workout you had to skip. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Apply the 3-question audit. Write down your answers or simply think them through. 1. What was my judgment that caused the pain? 2. Did I act in accordance with my values and virtues? 3. What is the one lesson I can take from this to improve my approach next time? The goal is not to dwell, but to extract insight quickly and efficiently. This practice closes the loop, transforming the raw pain of disappointment into the refined wisdom of experience. You are learning to fail forward. From that practice of structured reflection follows the final integration, turning these techniques from conscious, effortful exercises into an unconscious, reflexive habit. We've built the brace, learned to sort the wreckage, and audited the event for wisdom. But how do we ensure these tools are available to us in the heat of the moment, when a real crisis hits and there's no time for a 10-minute journaling session? The fear that this is all just a pleasant intellectual exercise, one that will crumble under the first sign of real pressure, is a valid one. The answer lies in transforming theory into embodiment, in turning practice into character. This is where we invoke the grand metaphor of the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius, the concept of the inner citadel. He wrote to himself in his private meditations, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." Your mind, he taught, can be this rock, this unbreachable fortress. But it is not a fortress you are born with. It is one you must build, stone by stone, day by day. He also noted, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. The impact brace, the dichotomy of control, and the post-impact audit are not just tools. They are the dyes you use to color your soul with resilience, clarity, and wisdom. They are the daily actions of construction and maintenance on your inner citadel. The final practice, then, is not a new technique, but a commitment to systemic integration. It is about weaving these exercises into the fabric of your daily life until they become as natural as breathing. The morning's impact brace becomes a 2-minute ritual alongside your coffee. As you look at your day's schedule, you don't just see a list of tasks. You briefly and calmly acknowledge a point of potential friction and pre-plan your first controlled response. It becomes a quiet, confident mental check-in. The dichotomy of control becomes a rapid mental filter you apply throughout the day. When a colleague is frustrating, or traffic is unbearable, or technology fails, the question, "Is this within my control?" flashes through your mind automatically. If the answer is no, you practice the art of letting go. If yes, you focus on your immediate action. This becomes your mind's default operating system, not a special program you have to boot up. The post-impact audit becomes a brief, natural part of your evening wind-down, a moment of reflection before sleep to process the day's challenges and harvest its lessons. This daily, consistent practice is the engine of neuroplasticity. The principle known as Hebb's law states it simply: neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you consciously choose to apply the impact brace instead of reacting with panic, you are strengthening the neural circuit that connects your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala. You are literally thickening the myelin sheath on the nerve fibers that allow for calm, rational thought to override emotional reactivity. The automatic, amygdala-driven reaction of "I'm crushed" becomes weaker and slower. The deliberate, prefrontal cortex-driven response of observe, sort, act becomes stronger, faster, and eventually your new automatic. You are not just changing your mind, you are physically changing your brain. The payoff is a fundamental shift in your baseline emotional state. It's a move toward what the Stoics called empathy. This is not to be confused with modern apathy, which is a state of listless indifference. Stoic is a state of tranquility, a robust and unshakable calm that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. It is the peace of the well-fortified citadel. Disappointment no longer registers as a personal crushing blow. It is simply new information, a course correction, a test of your training. You no longer live in constant low-grade fear of what might go wrong, because you have a deep embodied trust in your ability to respond virtuously and effectively when it does. This leads to better sleep, as your mind is not ruminating on the uncontrollable. It leads to sharper focus and better decision-making, as your cognitive resources are not being drained by chronic stress. This is the ultimate promise of this practice. It is not about becoming unfeeling. It is about feeling what is appropriate and acting with wisdom regardless. It is about building a foundation of inner strength so solid that the storms of the external world can only serve to wash it clean. This is not a trick. This is training. Build your citadel, one thought, one day at a time. The strength you seek is already within you, waiting to be fortified.